villages in the county. And as you're all aware, Fitchburg was a town and very rural at the time. And I think that there wasn't some into is that okay? So there wasn't foresight into reaching out to communities where there may need to be future cooperation, and so and then no one kept up with it over time. So I started the Housing Authority in 2012, and in 2013 started conversations with the city of Fitchburg about extending a resolution allowing us to operate within the city, and it's been a process, but I'm excited to be where we are. So just a little bit more background on this slide. Housing Authority reports to the Health and Human Needs Subcommittee of the County Board. We have a 5-member commission, and all of those commissioners are appointed by the county executive, and a really great commission that really spans the world of housing. We always have 2 Dane County supervisors. One is a non-voting member from the Health and Human Needs Subcommittee, and the other one is a full County Board supervisor. Our chair, Dan O'Callahan, is a real estate attorney, but is also on the CBG Commission for the City of Madison, very involved with housing policy and obviously housing law. We also have representatives from the world of housing finance, tax credit, zoning compliance. So we just really bring, and development as well. So a lot of really great different perspectives from the world. Does somebody want to? Okay. Mission obviously is there. It's promote and ensure safe, decent, affordable housing for our program participants, but then also working with housing owners and developers to rehabilitate and create new affordable housing. So we can go on to the next slide. Great. So this just talks about some of the programs that are at the core of the DCHA function. We do operate the Housing Choice Voucher Program in Dane County. We have an allocation of 1,276 vouchers. And some of those are for some special groups like disabled or families with children that are in the foster care system because they lack housing, but 1,200 vouchers altogether, and that's bringing $8.4 million annually in federal funds into our local communities. So, supporting landlords with rent assistance payments that certainly are helping with their bottom lines and creating quite a bit of economic activity. We also have messages. We also operate the public housing program, probably for about another 9 months here. We are in the process of closing out our public housing program. From the extent that it is sort of an older legacy program that Congress doesn't like to fund very well. And so HUD has been actively transitioning units away from public housing and into other funding models that are more stable and provide for better capital improvement in the long-term assessment. But we have 86 of those units currently in Stoughton, Sun Prairie, Monona, and Mazomanie. So a small part of what we do, and like I said, something that we're closing out here shortly. We also operate in the USDA rural development sphere. We have 56 units more than that. Units throughout the county, 16 in Cross Plains, 23 in Stoughton, 23 in Verona, 8 in DeForest. We also operate low-income housing tax credits with a 20-unit elderly project that we just preserved a couple of years ago from going to market rate in Belleville, as well as one we saved from foreclosure in Mesa-Maney. So preservation is really important to the Housing Authority. I don't know how familiar everyone is with the Paulson Report or the Dane County Affordable Housing Needs Assessment Report, which talks about the need to create 1,000 affordable housing units a year every year for 26 years. And in order to meet current and future demand. And we're far short of that 1,000 units a year goal in the county. But no matter how many units we create, if we're losing currently existing affordable units, then anything we create is just replacing units, and we're not making any progress. So preservation has always been very important to the Housing Authority. And then lastly, just a conventional housing portfolio. These are just what we like to call naturally occurring affordable housing, smaller, older units that we've purchased, and just made a commitment internally that we were going to target those units to families that are below 60% of county median income, and not raise the rents above the HUD published fair market limits. So we can move on to the next slide. So just some statistics here that I put together, specifically looking at the city of Fitchburg. And our sort of metro area as well. So we're right now looking at about a 3% vacancy rate, and that is skewed towards the city of Madison. Outside of the city of Madison, we're seeing even lower vacancy rates. Planners and economists will tell you that a 5 to 7% vacancy rate is ideal. In that range, neither a landlord or a tenant really has an upper hand. And when we start to see low vacancy rates, what we see are skyrocketing rents, because landlords know they can continue to increase the rent and not suffer a higher vacancy. And we also see folks being screened out of the marketplace because and especially in our lower income families, because they don't have 3 times the rent each month in income. We know that low income families are also going to have some greater challenges with credit. Maybe weren't able to afford their last housing, might have an eviction. We also know that poverty and alcohol and drug addiction issues go hand in hand. So when vacancy rates go low, rents go high, and our most vulnerable citizens become homeless. Talking about fair market rents, they've increased by 63% since 2000, while income has only gone up by 55%. So rents are going up very fast, incomes are not going up as fast, and so affording housing is a problem that is only getting worse. Some Fitchburg specific numbers. The number of very low and extremely low income renter households in Fitchburg increased by 84% from 2010 to 2015. So what we're seeing here is not only a need, but an increasing need for those affordable housing units. And if any of this terminology, if you need definitions, very low income means income is at 50% of the county median income, and extremely low income is 30%. And the number of rental units affordable to those households has increased by just 36% over that same time period. So as of 2015, Fitchburg had 1,055 more renter families at or below 50% of county median income than there were units affordable at that same income. So there is a definite need for more affordable housing within the city. And all these statistics, I did link, you'll see the asterisks there, back to where this information comes from. Some of that is HUD data, some of that is, again, the Dane County Housing Needs Assessment Report. Also, the charts on the right there, you may have to minimize your visuals here to see it, but there's been, questions in the past about can I move this? Oh, there we go. About some more Fitchburg specific data. Vacancy rate, what we're looking at, 2.27% for Fitchburg. So obviously that's even lower than the 3% average that we're looking at. Just a visual on what's going on with income versus rent. So we can move on from here, unless there's any questions about any of that data. All right. So housing supply, just a little more here. Housing choice voucher lease-ups are centered in Madison, with fewer in first-ring municipalities. I've got a chart there to the right, because not only does the Dane County Housing Authority operate the Housing Choice Voucher Program, the City of Madison also has their own Housing Choice Voucher Program. So you can see the concentration there in the City of Madison, then Sun Prairie, Fitchburg, Middleton, and then to a lesser extent, vouchers in Stoughton, Monona, DeForest, and on down the line. One of the things that's come up in the past is this question of, well, we can talk about the number of low-income families, we can talk about the need for more affordable housing units, but how is the distribution looking? And so one of the things a statistic that I did come up here for you is the number of low-income units adjusted for population. So when we take a look at the larger municipalities, the cities within Dane County, that's the pie chart over there to the right. And when you adjust for population, so low income units per 100 citizens, you'll see Fitchburg has 4.4 units per 100 citizens, which puts it kind of smack dab in the middle, with Monona, Madison, and Stoughton having more affordable or low income rental units per population. Middleton, Sun Prairie, and Verona having less. And then again, just back to the Dane County Affordable Housing Needs Assessment Report, we need to create 10,812 affordable units to meet just the current demand. It doesn't factor in population growth, and obviously none of this took into consideration a pandemic and millions of people losing their jobs all at once. So things are only becoming more challenging. Any questions about any of this data from this slide?
I sort of just have a global question, if I could.
Yeah.
So you always hear about how Dane County is growing, and in some ways we're described as a recession-proof economy, because our economy revolves around the UW and state government. But yet, housing affordability is such a major issue here in the way that it's talked about. So if you have employers like Epic, the UW Health, obviously state employees who all make very good incomes with great benefits, who don't have to seek out affordable housing. My question is, why do we have an issue with affordable housing in the county if we are so stable economically?
Sure, and that's a great question. And what I would say is that Dane County globally and Fitchburg locally are really a tale of two cities, or tale of two counties. One of the most stark statistics that came out of Fitchburg's own assessment was this income gap between homeowners and renter families in Fitchburg. And that number is about $60,000 per year that the average homeowner is making as compared to the average renter. So I think it's very true that we have a lot of really great opportunities and a lot of really great jobs here in Dane County and in Fitchburg. But the problem is that is not trickling down to the lower income families of the county. And so when we're talking about, from service workers or even, school teachers, police, firefighters, they're not getting to those income levels. They're not getting to those EPIC jobs. They're not getting to those university and state government jobs. And those are really the folks that we need to be focusing on. Yes, Dorothy, more missing middle.
That makes sense. Thank you.
You bet. And just, even in my conversations with Fitchburg alders, going back, like I said, we've been working on this for a number of years, home ownership, even in Fitchburg, is such an issue where, talking to alders who say, well, we have a dual income household and can't find housing to own in the city of Fitchburg. And I think that speaks to really this difference between home ownership and renters.
Well, I think that leads to sort of a bigger question, and it's one that I asked in my 6 years on the council consistently, is that, you look at other markets, you look at other cities in other states, in some ways, rents, especially if you look at downtown Madison, it's like Chicago prices in a college town that is the home of state government that is a fraction of the population. Housing in Milwaukee is cheaper oftentimes than housing in Dane County. So is there something in Dane County that drives up the cost just out of the gate?
Absolutely, and I would say, one of the key features that first drove people to coming to Madison is part of the problem. We have two massive lakes right in the middle of the city, and think about how much housing, if we were, not a Milwaukee or some other municipality where. We're really grateful to have those lakes. They're awesome, and that drives a lot of people to want to live here. But if you think about all the housing that can't be built there, that creates a big problem. And then just to your point about the university and the state government and even EPIC, we like to call it the EPIC effect, that drives rents up in Madison or in Verona. Well, that has a trickle-down effect to Fitchburg and to Oregon and all these surrounding municipalities, because if the rents are going up there, then in Madison and in Verona, then first of all, those become comps for other municipalities, and it drives people with lower incomes out of those municipalities because they can't find housing that they can afford. And so it really does trickle down to the other municipalities and affect rents there as well.
Yeah, that makes sense too. Thank you.
Absolutely. I can't remember if there's anything on the last page. I don't know, since we put this together. Oh, okay. So this just talks about some of the other things that the Housing Authority does and some of the resources that we bring to the communities where we do operate. So since 2015, we have worked in the Section 42, also called LIHTC, Low Income Housing Tax Credit Program. And we have helped create 529 units of affordable housing in Madison, Middleton, Monona, Sun Prairie, and Waunakee. We do this in a number of different ways. Sometimes we are just simply a sponsor of a project, bringing in, we sponsor Federal Home Loan Bank Affordable Housing Development Fund applications, which is opening up some of those grant funds, those soft funds that developers as for-profit entities can't get on their own. Sometimes we're actually part of the application process. Having a nonprofit in the development structure can help with an application for tax credits with WIDA. So we've done that as well. We also can issue bonds that are exempt from both federal and state taxes, which then they can be either syndicated or funded directly by a bank. But the big deal here is the interest that the developer pays to the bank on that loan, the bank then doesn't have to pay taxes on, which means the bank can turn around and lower the interest rate and make the housing more affordable. So we've done that for a few different developers here locally. We talked about the grant funds that for-profit developers can't access. We also can project-base some of our rental assistance in order to increase the cash flow to the developers. So a lot of times with tax credit developments, developers will get extra points by saying, we're going to create units that are affordable all the way down to 50 or 30% of median income. And they do that because they obviously want to create affordable housing, but also get preferential scoring from WIDA. But that impacts the cash flow of the development and sometimes even make the project not feasible. But by putting some of our rental assistance in, the developer is able to make those very extremely low income units part of the project, but doesn't have to sacrifice the rental income, and sometimes that can just help be the difference that makes a project go forward. So it's not just the housing that we want to do on our own, but it's also partnering with we've partnered with Gorman, we've partnered with J.T. Klein, Stonehouse. I know I'm forgetting some, but really working with a lot of the big tax credit developers here in town, MSP as well, and Moving Out are the other two big partners that we work with. The last thing I don't really have a slide for is sort of this question of, okay, Dane County Housing Authority, if we have this resolution to operate, what are you going to do in Fitchburg? And I think there's a number of answers to that question. Obviously, we want to help create affordable housing. We want to work with those tax credit developers to bring projects to Fitchburg that'll create affordable housing. I talked about preservation. That's really important. I know there are some affordable projects in Fitchburg which have a affordability sunset in the not so distant future. The Housing Authority can play a role there, keeping those from going to market, and then having those residents need to look for new housing. We talked about home ownership. That's something that I would really like to explore as a possibility in Fitchburg, because the average price of a single family home in Fitchburg is very, very high. And so looking at, are there things we can do from a policy standpoint, looking at maybe smaller lot size, maybe looking at some more congregate home development, looking at land banking. A big portion of the cost of single family home ownership in Fitchburg is the land. So is there a way that we can purchase that land with grant funds and land bank it, whether that's with the city or with another group like Commonwealth does some land banking, so that the homeowner isn't absorbing the cost of the land. The other thing that's really important is rehabilitation of existing housing. Before I was at the Housing Authority and at WIDA, I came out of property management, worked for many years in property management in Fitchburg, and I know you have a lot of old, again, what we like to call naturally occurring affordable housing. And really what we're talking about is housing that was built in the 60s that did not have substantial capital improvements, and rents really just became deflated over time because of the age and quality of the housing. One of the things that we do is purchase housing and secure grant funds, financing, tax credits to go in and do rehab. We purchased 54 units in Stoughton, Verona, and Forest in 2017, and ended up doing a major project where we put $60,000 per unit into rehabilitation. So I mean, we're not talking about gutting down to studs, but we're talking about new roofs, new windows, new siding, new kitchens, new bathrooms, new flooring, new common areas, new mechanicals, parking lots, sidewalks, landscaping. And so, you know, it would, I know that Dorothy can drive around her neighborhood and identify quite a number of properties that could really use $60,000 per unit in rehab. And so the other thing with that is we partner with Wisconsin Management to bring in professional property management. So where you have the Belmar neighborhood and some other neighborhoods where you have these small 4 and 8 unit apartment buildings that are undercapitalized, and the owners really can't put a ton of money into them. And again, just the sheer economics. If you have a 4-unit apartment building and 1 unit is vacant, that can be the difference between making the mortgage payment and not making the mortgage payment. And so small landlords sometimes make economic decisions that are perhaps in their financial best interest, but aren't in the best interest of the property. So maybe not doing the screening criteria, maybe not leaving that unit vacant waiting for a good tenant. So if the housing authority can purchase some of those units, consolidate, have that economy of scale to where, you know, 1 or 2 vacancies doesn't put the project in peril, and be able to have professional property management that is taking good care of the units, that's doing that in-depth screening and making sure that we're getting quality tenants working hand in hand with police department, so that if there are issues, to turn that property around, and then again bringing in those financial resources to make it quality housing that the city is proud of, that the residents are proud of, and that really brings improvement to the city. So those are the things that I think the housing authority can do, and be a partner with the city. And I'm just really excited to see how we can help.
Thank you, Rob. Any question for Rob? One of my questions was, but you answered, so what is your plan for Fitchburg? But you answered that question. Any other question?
I really appreciated the information, Rob, and sort of like the history. I found this to be quite helpful. So thank you for being so thorough and being able to give us a 50,000-foot view in such a short amount of time.
Absolutely, you bet.
Okay, so
I wanted to make just one quick comment, going back to Dan's question about affordable housing. One thing we did find when we were interviewing one of the managers for the Fairways and the Pines, they mentioned how many Epic employees live there because the rent was very affordable, and they just really needed a place to store their things, basically, because they were traveling all the time. And I think that really adds to some of the problems that Fitchburg has as far as affordable housing, because, you know, they're taking units that could be available to other people. So just, and the number was quite a bit. I was surprised at the number of Epic employees that lived there.
okay, so in your package, the resolution is there, and then it was approved in housing with an amendment. It was approved in plan commission and in finance. So if everyone is okay, you don't have any question, we can move and vote. Dan? Hardy has a question? No. Okay, so all in favor of resolution R-26-20, say aye.
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 Nays? The motion carries. Thank you very much. Thank you, Karen
Julia?
and Rob.
Julia, can I just get a
And good
clarification?
that we are gonna work together.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it, everyone.
Thanks, Karen and Rob.
So
Julia,
next, let me go back to the agenda.
Julia, Joyce has a question.
Okay,
I can't, my mic isn't going. It's on. The motion was that with or without the amendment?
with the amendment.
With the amendment included?
Yeah, because that one was coming through all the commission with that amendment, isn't it?
Okay. Well, I just want to clarify that we have the amendment included. So it was,
Sure, since I made the motion, yes, that was my intention.
okay, Andy and Mark, you're okay with the amendment included?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so next in our agenda is Misty. She's gonna talk about the hotel room tax report consideration and some, how it's gonna affect our budget. And I know that Mike sent an email yesterday explaining some of the narrative, and I have a couple of questions because I couldn't understand Mike. So, but Misty, so all yours.
So I'd like to start by, well, first of all, I guess, I'm Misty Dodge, I'm the finance director, for those of you that haven't met me before. You will see me once in a while when there's questions. I usually put out this quarterly financial report. We did it a month early this time, though, because we wanted to have this conversation a little bit earlier with information of what's happening. So I'm going to share my screen with all of you so that you can see the report. And can you guys see it?
Yes.
The report? Excellent. So I'm going to spend a little bit.
Excuse me, is this what Mike sent out this morning?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Yep. So the report, I'm going to go through a little bit of the different categories for those of you that are new. And if you have any questions, of course, stop me and we can talk about it. The important thing to look up here is the date that the report is as of. So you'll see this report is as of March 31st. The reason why that's important is because even though the quarter has ended for quarterly room tax, we don't have any of that information back yet. We don't get, what those numbers are until usually April. So you'll see all of these room tax numbers are zero. So we're showing you really just the expenses that have happened so far. We don't know the revenues quite yet. But this first part of the report is the room tax that we collected.
Misty.
Yep.
We don't see that part of the report.
Am I sharing the wrong part? Let me try sharing again. It always looks so easy when Fact TV does it. Now do you see that report?
Yes. No.
Okay. Excellent. So here's that date that I was talking about. So the room tax, this first part of it is the quarterly room tax that we receive. This goes back quite a few years. The purpose of this is so you can kind of see trends. The first quarter and the fourth quarter are generally not as high as the second and third quarter. And then you can also see trends by year. So what I would expect, and a part of the conversation we need to have once we get through this report, is that room tax collections will probably be down. So this will be a way for us to visually see that. Another thing I'd like to point out is I included the percentage of room tax on the side here for the years, because that plays a factor into it too. So it's not necessarily that there were more rooms generated or more hotels. Sometimes it's just that the percentage increased. So we put that in there too for context. Another place you're going to want to look is in this increase and decrease for the current year versus the prior year. So you can see just how we're sitting based on the last year. And the reason why that's important is because a lot of times we'll use the last year as the basis for setting the budget for the first year. So if we're falling behind compared to the year before, it's likely that we're falling behind on the budget from a revenue perspective view. So then included here is just a visual chart, so you can see all that information that way. You can see that we've been increasing more, and you can tell very clearly where the percentage changed here from the 6% to the 7%. And we don't have anything for 2020 yet.
So you know what you need to add to? How many hotels we have per year too? Because, when we see a jump from one year to another one because we added another hotel, isn't it?
Yep, we did add the Staybridge Suites last year or the year before.
Yeah, in
years ago.
2018, yeah. Mhm.
Yeah, I can work that in, absolutely. So then this bottom part of the report is how that room tax is allocated. So the hotels report to us what their taxable room tax receipts were. And that's important because not everything that they collect in revenue is actually taxable from a room tax perspective. So things like sales at the convenience store and restaurants and stuff like that is not taxable from a room tax perspective. So it's just the certain things that are connected to the room. And then from that amount, the 7% is what the tax is. And I'll remind you that the tax that we're charging them is put directly on the invoice to the customer. So the person that's staying there sees what that room tax amount is and pays that directly, and the hotel simply remits that tax to us. On here, we'll also show the amount that we've collected through the date and how much is still owed, just so you can see that whether or not we're keeping up on the collections. And then this part here is how it's allocated. So the first piece, FCVBB, is the Fitchburg Fitchburg Chamber Visitor Business Bureau. There was a relatively recent law change that required 70% of the room tax that we collect to go to our designated tourism entity. And Fitchburg worked with the Fitchburg Chamber to create that partnership. And so under state law and our contract, 70% of what we collect is required to be remitted directly to them. And the rest of it, 7% of what is collected goes to general government. So this pays for things like the administrative costs in order to collect and to report on the room tax that's received. And then the 23% is what is used for CETA within CETA's budget. So we're talking about the CETA portion. CETA has a couple of different buckets that they put their money into, and they're outlined in this report as the different colors. So this blue color, the first part, this is really the bulk of what CETA spends, a lot of what their budget is. And you'll see we include what the revenues are. We haven't collected anything yet as of the date of this report. And then we compare it to budget so we can see how we're sitting. And then these are the expenses, actual this budget. One thing that you're always going to want to keep tabs on is this net surplus and deficit to date. So right now it's a negative. That's not really a concern because we're spending money, but we haven't gotten our quarterly room tax yet. So a little bit plus or minus isn't really a problem. But at the end of each year, it'll be good to see where you ended. And then there's certain items that are approved but are not paid yet. So different CETA meetings that have happened where they authorize things to be spent, but since they haven't been yet, they're not reported up above. We want to keep track of those still, so we include them here. As you can see, as of the date of this report, we had a negative $15,000 deficit. There's another $1,800 that we expect to pay soon, so that makes our deficit $17,000. But then we look at what our beginning of year fund balance was, and then we have $345,000. And then after you subtract that out, you've got this $329,000. Now, this is really important, and it's going to go to the rest of the conversation once we get through this report, that this is how we'll be able to weather this storm. So Mike included in his email that we're not expecting room tax collections to be as high as we budgeted by a decent amount. And so we're going to have to dip into this fund balance amount in order to continue at least the minimum operations without sacrificing not. So there is a pretty healthy fund balance available. Not that we want to go and spend it, but fund balance is designed for, these rainy days. Like right now with room tax, this is a rainy day. This is a perfect reason why you would tap into fund balance to do your minimum operation. On the next bucket is this red bucket. This is sports commission money. So before the law change that required 70% to go to the tourism entity, CETA had a variety of different places where they put their different money, one of which was the sports commission. And so you can see that we had $75,000 in that bucket as of the first of the year. We spent almost $18,000 so far through the year. We also are expecting to spend another $7,000 during this year that's been authorized, that hasn't been paid yet. So this money is available. It's supposed to be for sports related items. The next category is this green category. That's the signage. We don't have anything necessarily in the progression phase right now, but I know Mike and Joyce are working on a couple of different ideas, like a welcome to Fitchburg sign and that type of thing. So this money is available for when those logistics get worked out and that project can move forward. And then the last category is the revolving loan fund. So several years ago, the city was able to capitalize a revolving loan fund when a TID closed. So the initial investment from the city side was $175,000. Then we also are partnering with Madison Development Corporation, or MDC, have another $200,000 that started in that amount. You can see we currently have one loan outstanding on the MDC side, which is making payments as under our current revised agreement. And then you can see, since the history of this program, what our revenues have been. So the repayment, the interest, that type of a thing. And then on the MDC side, we also had some dividends that we got from participating in that program. These two negative numbers is our bad debt expense. We did have a couple of loans that did not go as well as we would have hoped. But the thing I'd like to point out is that the loss that we took on those loans is offset by the interest that we've made on those other deals. So the revolving loan fund is somewhat risky. I mean, we do our best to work through how we can make sure that we will get paid back, but there is that risk. But the reward that we've gotten from the ones that have been successful have outweighed or nearly outweighed the risk that we took on those. So then the last section of this report is just the fund balance by type. So all of those categories put together. So you can see that in the chart here. And so I know Mike sent out the information via email that we're expecting about a 50% drop in room tax collections based on what we generally would have expected to see. And then Mike, you included your revised budget. Do you want to talk about what you think is the minimum operations?
Sure. I sent an email that just kind of broke down. If we're looking at 50%, the projected revenue for 2020 originally was $500,000. So if we're looking at a 50% revenue decrease, then we'd be at $250,000. And the CETA portion of that at $500,000 was $115,000, but at 23% of the $250,000, we would be looking at $57,500. And then in the narrative section that I sent you with the items that were highlighted in yellow, those are items that Joyce and I went through that are kind of the minimal activities that we think we would be involved in 2020, considering that drop in revenue. And just to take you quickly through the categories there are our memberships in the various organizations. I know those organizations are all going to be struggling as well with the health and economic crisis that we're all going through. So I think we deem those to be important and essential to kind of maintain our relationships with our partners. In section 325, we're just keeping those out there as far as a couple of annual meetings. Some of those were already scheduled, but we're waiting to see will they be rescheduled at a later date after we get more certainty as far as health and safety protocols and the Safer at Home directive from the state. In 360, we still would like to do a business luncheon, hopefully later in the year. And if we do one, we think it might be a chance to kind of bring people together to finally get to see everybody after not being together for many months. But we would try and do it very bare bones. Hopefully, with the road construction done over by our friends at the Promega BTC, we could move the event back over there and really reduce the expenses of not having to haul tables and chairs like we did last year. And then we're hoping that maybe we can have a speaker that would be that we wouldn't have to pay for and give an honorarium. Then we've got the holiday lighting in section 392, and then we've got the header package in 570. That's the economic development component of our city webpage. And then there's the salary allocation as well, which is a transfer to the general fund. So if you add up all of those items, they total $65,724. And again, if we're at 57,500 as far as a projected revenue based on a 50% reduction of what we're expecting, the balance of that, we would tap into those reserves that we have to cover that difference. Obviously, this is kind of a snapshot in time. We may have to adjust things as we learn more. Angela and I have been trying to stay in contact with our tourism partners, our hotels. One good thing is that our 4 hotel properties are all open. They're getting a minimal amount of business. One fortunate thing that we have is a lot of construction activity, not only road construction, but commercial construction. And that's been a lifeline, not only for our hotels, but also for our restaurants who are doing pickup and delivery to some of those job sites and everything. So it's maintained at least a minimal amount of economic activity and room nights at the respective properties. We're also fortunate that our hotels are located in mixed-use developments, and we've got the 2 that have suites, the Hawthorne Suites and the Staybridge Suites. And people that are kind of here for the road construction and those crews gravitate towards those types of properties and rooms. And they're also in close proximity and walking distance to grocery stores. And they also have some restaurants that are available that they can at least get pickup meals from there. So we're fortunate in that respect. I know in the city of Madison, some properties in particular have completely shut down, which we're not in that situation. So if you know of anybody that's looking for hotel rooms, whether they're contractors or if there's still some business people that are traveling, or for those families that maybe have somebody in their family that have tested positive and maybe the rest of the family needs to move out for a little time, our hotels are well equipped to accommodate families in that situation too.
I have a question.
Sure.
So I know that you and Joyce have made all of these cuts, and thank you for, from 481,000, you're gonna, go to 65,000. My question is, I don't understand why we need to go to the reserve, to our reserve to cover the different one. So do we need to fund the Fitchburg Chamber at what was budget? You know what I mean? So
Yeah, Julie, I didn't do anything to that category. You're talking now the line item 390 there, the 70% that automatically based on our tourism entity relationship with the Fitchburg Chamber Visitor Business Bureau, because whatever revenue does come in 2020, 70% still will flow to those organizations there. I just was looking at our CETA expenditure and the 23% that are direct expenditures that we make here. So there will still be that other bucket that will get allocated to them. That will be 70% of whatever is coming in. So that difference between the 250 and we have to back out, so 70% of that would be, give me just a second here. So 175,000, if we achieve that 250,000, would still flow over to the Fitchburg Chamber. And then remember, they now manage our relationships with our regional partners who are Destination Madison and the Madison Area Sports Commission. So then they have an allocation that goes to those 2 organizations for the region.
So I want to understand this partnership. So we need to, no matter what, we need to send them a check for $350,000 this year.
No. We send them, it's based on when the revenue comes in.
The 70% is the amount that we have to remit.
Yeah, I know. The 70% of what we collect.
Correct. 70% of what we collect, not what we budget.
Okay, I want to be sure. Okay.
Yeah, it's based on the revenue that comes in.
No, I understand, but I want to be sure that there is under the contract there is another, clause or something that we need to, fund them according to what it was budget, because they are gonna also have a decrease in their, revenues too, a big hit. You know what I mean? So
yes. And that's why Angela and I are staying in close communication and kind of watching various webinars that even national and international tourism organizations are hosting to kind of figure out where that whole industry, how they will be adjusting. And one thing we learned was they're projecting 50% in 2020, and then they're saying possibly 75% of 2019 revenues in 2021, and then maybe back to 100% of 2019 revenue in 2022. So it's not going to be a V kind of recovery here where everything bounces back, at least in the tourism and hospitality industry, because people may be hesitant to travel. There may be some changes just in regular business operations based on this experience that businesses decide some of their folks maybe don't need to travel and can do some things virtually and via Zoom instead of in-person travel. So we're going to monitor and kind of follow our regional partners and some things from the tourism experts that are there nationally and internationally. One good
Hey,
thing.
Julia, go ahead, Mike.
One good thing I think for our properties is, the corporations that we have here generate some really healthy room night demand in good times. So as they kind of get back to ramping up their operations, hopefully that then generates some of that room night demand again.
Julia, this is Mark. I want to clarify, the chamber, Angela has already cut her chamber budget, and as Mike said, they've been in close contact throughout this. She's reduced staff hours, and she's put all these assumptions that Mike's sharing back into the budget. So the chamber's watching this very closely as well. We're kind of in the same boat here.
Okay, thank you. So any other question for Mike or Misty?
So there was one other question on the chat that Dorothy asked about the Airbnb. We
Yeah.
actually did get our first Airbnb report for the first quarter,
Oh.
and we got about $3,000 in room tax from.
What? Really?
Mhm. So
Oh my.
I was surprised, to be honest with you, that we got a report at all. But
Yeah.
we'll see how that progresses as we move forward.
You mind if I ask, how did that get produced? Like, who generates those reports for us?
Airbnb does as
Okay.
corporate. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Hey, $2,000, I'll take it, right? I mean,
Yeah.
And that's
Yeah.
required, they're required to do that by state statute now. And we thought maybe though we were gonna have to track them down to get them started doing that. So we appreciate them being proactive and getting it processed here.
Yeah.
So Misty, that one is annual reports. You're gonna get annual reports or annual, what is the frequency?
We'll get quarterly, just like we do for
quarterly.
the other hotel.
Okay.
Yep, so that'll be quarterly.
Okay.
And the one other thing that I would like to share with all of you is that every year we are required to file a report with the Department of Revenue as well. So if you go out to the Department of Revenue site, our room tax report is out there.
Okay.
This is a nice report. It's actually all of the reports that have been filed so far by all the municipalities are available. And it's kind of cool. You can sort them. It's like you can sort them by room tax rate. So you can see where our rate is in comparison to all the other municipalities across Wisconsin. And then we have to include things like the board members that are at the chamber, since they get that 70%. And then anytime the chamber spends $1,000 or more in one transaction, that's listed on a separate report too. So there's a lot of great information out there if people are interested.
Okay. Can you send us a link?
Yep, absolutely.
Okay. Dan Hardy, do you want to speak? He's coming and going on the screen, so. Okay.
I'm fine.
Okay, no, because I see your name coming and going on the screen, so maybe you want to talk. Okay.
It automatically mutes and then it unmutes. I'm just
Okay.
listening.
Okay. So any other question for Misty and Mike?
And Julia and CETA members, we'll keep you updated on room tax as we learn more, as we make adjustments and everything. We'll keep you in the loop because it changes.
Dorothy had a good question though. She said, the zip code issues we're having with the Madison or Fitchburg, are we having any issues going to Madison versus Fitchburg?
So that is possible. The hard thing is the reports don't give us that much breakdown as far as what that detail is. So it's a project that my staff and Mike are going to work on to make sure that the places are coded to the right municipality. So at this point, we don't know, but it's something that we'll look into.
I have a question, and I asked it years ago, and I can't remember what the answer was. So I'm wondering if either Misty Mike or Joyce know, I think Jennifer brings up a point here that made me think of it. Is there any chance Fitchburg would ever be able to just get its own zip code and just, not have to worry about these kinds of things?
We worked on that many years ago, Dan, and we worked on it for many years. And we basically were told by the post office that we were not going to get our own zip code. And they were very blunt that they're not in the business of helping a community establish its identity. It's all based on mail delivery and the route.
That's right.
And everything there. But
Yeah, I remember that now.
Yeah, what we did.
I wonder what's going to come first, the school or the zip code?
What we did achieve.
Probably the zip code.
What we did achieve, though, at that time was previously, if you used Fitchburg, Wisconsin, with any of the 5 zip codes that we are a part of, sometimes your mail didn't get delivered. And what we were able to achieve was, if you look up any of our 5 zip codes, Madison, Verona, and Oregon are listed as the primary for those respective zip codes, but Fitchburg is listed as an acceptable alternative, so we don't have the mail delivery issues like we had many years ago there. And then we have maintained.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, that postal contract station at Sue's Hallmark, too, which is kind of the new model for post offices. They're really not creating new traditional post offices anymore, so we kind of have that, the new prototype that operates at Sue's Hallmark.
Yeah, thanks for the refresher, and I'm sure that was helpful to other people who didn't have this conversation years ago.
Okay, so it's 11:10, so, and we have three more presentations. So thank you, Mike and Misty. So now we are moving
Misty.
to the Healthy Neighborhood Initiative update. So Wade, are you there?
I am here. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great.
We can hear and see you.
Just bear with me. I'm going to share my screen. Are people seeing a full-page PowerPoint?
Yes.
Great.
Yes.
And Scott Endo and Kim Hearn, if you're both on the line, if you could maybe unmute your video or unmute your sound and chime in as needed.
Will do. Thank you.
I think I did it. Okay. So thanks for having us. For those of you that I don't know, I'm Wade Thompson, City of Fitchburg Planning. Maybe Scott and Kim, you want to introduce yourselves as well?
Sure. My name is Kim Hearn, and I work with the United Way of Dane County.
And I am Scott Endel. I'm the City of Fitchburg Park Recreation and Forestry Director.
Okay, we'll get to Scott and Kim in a little bit, but a lot to cover today, and I really want to try to move quickly. I know you guys have been through a lot already and have a few more things to go, but just quickly want to touch on the H&I big picture. We'll talk about grant program and Fitchburg Fund. Kim will help out with that. I'll quickly talk about our neighborhood navigators as a big vital piece of the H&I. And then we'll spend a lot of time at the end giving you guys an update on the North Fitchburg Road Neighborhood Hub. So again, for folks that are maybe new to the committee, I'm going to use the H from H&I to refer to Healthy Neighborhoods Initiative. But basically, it's a strategic, interdepartmental, comprehensive, integrated approach to address specific issues in 3 of our northern neighborhoods. And I think folks are probably pretty familiar with our neighborhoods. We've got the Verona Road area on the west, kind of the Allied, Belmar, Renaissance on the park area on the other side of Verona Road, and then our North Fitchburg Road neighborhood as well. And we really started small with this thing. It started with a 2-page memo a couple of years ago. We built it into a strategic plan with 16 very specific action items. And we've spent the past year really starting to implement those action items. And in terms of successes of the initiative, it really is about all hands on board. It's about city officials, city residents, city staff, and nonprofit partners all working together. So to that point, I want to first talk about one piece of the H&I, and that's our grant program. And then we'll talk about a specific piece of the grant program, which is the Fitchburg Fund. So the grant program began in 2017. The program did kind of bounce around before it found a home in the planning department. We've had it since 2019, and we're certainly glad to have it. So just quickly, some results from 2019. We dispersed approximately 50 grand to 6 nonprofit organizations. The issues addressed in these organizations covered the wide gamut of issues that we see in our neighborhoods, things like food insecurity, youth mentoring, and then leadership, workforce, and community engagement development for some of our disadvantaged populations. All told, in 2019, our $50,000 served over 3,000 city residents. Moving to 2020, again, another strong application pool this year. We received 10 applications. Again, just a reminder, the max award we can give for an application is $10,000. So we actually had more demand than supply this year. Again, we had about $89,000 in demand. Now, one application was ineligible based on some costs they were asking to be reimbursed for. They were ineligible costs. So essentially, we had $79,000 in eligible requested funding. Our supply this year was about $68,000. So all that being told, we looked at 8 applications that our grant review committee has recommended for funding. I do want to be clear that staff fully supports the committee recommendations. I do also want to point out that Julie and Dorothy do sit on that grant review committee, as well as some neighborhood representatives also. So just quickly, I want to touch on the application review recommendation and approval process. It is a fairly thorough process. We want to make sure we get a lot of eyes on these applications, dot a lot of I's, cross a lot of T's. So our first step is at the staff level, we review the applications, we make recommendations. That's been completed. We did that in March of this year. The second step is to take those recommendations to the grant committee. And then we present those recommendations and they make their own recommendations. Generally speaking, in most years, this year being another example, the committee recommendations very closely follow staff recommendations. So I think that's a really cool thing to have that synergy there. So the committee met again in March, made their recommendations. We had hoped to get those recommendations to our council about a month ago. Obviously, with the public health emergency, we've had to delay things, but we are expecting to get those recommendations to council next Tuesday for their review, and then they will make the final funding award decisions at their discretion. And then come early May, we will announce those funding awards. So in terms of recommendations for 2020, again, 8 recommendations that we're recommending for funding, totaling $68,000. And just quickly running through the applications, again, I think they're really solid, reputable organizations. They cover a wide range of issues in terms of neighborhood needs. The first one being Badger Prairie Needs Network, kind of a food insecurity issue. Big Brothers Big Sisters, I think folks are probably familiar with that group, really solid youth mentoring organization. Boys and Girls Club, we've not funded these folks in the past, but again, a really solid local organization. This project will focus on healthy dental habits, education. Catholic Multicultural Center, another new applicant this year. I think a really cool project. They're actually working to train folks in the culinary aspect of employment, and then they will attempt to place those folks in employment after they train them. Girls on the Run, a small award. They're a really good youth mentoring group, focused kind of on female youth empowerment. Latino Academy, we funded them in the past. They do really good work. This year, they're looking at doing some CDL, commercial driver's license training, as well as some computer literacy training for Latino Hispanic populations. New Bridge, this is a senior group, senior center supportive. They're actually working in partnership with our senior center. They would focus on kind of this Latinx grandchild support group. And then finally, Unidos, we've also funded these folks in the past. Really, an important organization. They work to address sexual and domestic abuse, and they really want to look at growing the capacity of their organization. So just summarizing the 2020 funding recommendations, the top chart here shows you geographically how these recommendations are spread out. And one thing I think is really cool about that top graph is in years past, we saw the large majority of applications in the North Fish Hatchery Road neighborhood. There was a lot of energy up there, a lot of momentum, a lot of partners. And certainly that's fine, but we were hoping to see some of that energy spread to the other neighborhoods as well. This year, I think you're seeing that. You see the majority of applications in our other two neighborhoods and still a solid amount of applications in the Fish Hatchery Road neighborhood. So the bottom graph there, again, just kind of breaks out in summary form what I just talked about. On the left, we've got kind of our application project categories. To the right of that, we've got our recommended funding amount. And then to the right of that, we've got our number of applications. So with that, I guess just summing up kind of the H&I grant program, you know, again, I think we all know this program is relatively new. I believe it did have its origins with CETA, and we're certainly at a staff level thankful for your initiative on that and your continued support. But I do want to point out it is a work in progress. The city has not traditionally done anything like this before. Neither has the staff that is managing it. So we are learning as we go. We are making improvements and modifications every year. To that point, we did propose some good modifications improvements in 2020. Those did get approved. We're more stringent in our application and reporting requirements. And we're also piloting this idea of kind of a pilot issues RFP approach. And we'll talk about that in a couple of minutes with Kim. And then we do have some potential 2021 improvements as well that we'd like to discuss at the next H&I committee meeting, if and when we can schedule that. And of course, those modifications would be subject to both that committee's approval as well as council approval. So before we get to the Fitchburg Fund piece, I guess maybe now's a good time to just take any questions on kind of big picture H&I grant program.
Wade, this is Mark. Just a question. I work a little bit out at the food bank. What's the food insecurity money to be used for? I'm not quite certain how they're classifying that.
Yeah, so Badger Prairie Needs Network, yeah, the $10,000 award. So I don't know if you know Marcia from that group, but I've been in correspondence with her. I think their initial proposal was to, again, just kind of increase the people they serve, kind of ramp up their volume. And one really cool piece of that application was they were actually going to set up a satellite location at City Redeemer Church in the Verona Road West neighborhood. So that kind of shows you this idea of nonprofit faith group partnership. Now with the current pandemic issue, I know Marcia's rethinking, you know, how her organization works. But to that point, I think she did mention they are kind of in emergency mode and they are serving folks that they've traditionally not served. But I guess back to your original question, the 2020 application is really about expanding their capacity as well as creating a satellite location in one of our neighborhoods.
Thank you.
Wade, I have a quick question for you.
Microphone.
Wade, it's Joyce. I have a quick question for you.
Sure.
Are you aware, did the More Smiles Dental Clinic, did that go out of Boys and Girls Club?
Yeah, good question. So we took a tour there, and Dorothy, you might be able to chime in. We took a tour there a couple of months ago, and I think they did really have to ramp things down. But that's where I think this proposal could maybe ramp that up a little bit. But yeah, I think they did have to cut back on some of their services.
They were not able to find adequate number of providers that wanted to work there. It's a volunteer program.
Any other question? Okay, wait.
Okay, so moving in to kind of one specific piece of the grant program, and again, this is a new pilot partnership with United Way. Essentially, what it was, it's a really short time window fundraising campaign. We did it in February and March of this year. We focused on a specific priority issue. In this case, it was youth education, leadership development, and career readiness. So that's what we focused our campaign around in terms of trying to raise funds. And this issue was essentially, we didn't just pull this issue out of a hat. We identified it through a lot of hard data, as well as kind of more soft data elements in terms of engaging with our neighborhood residents and our partners in those neighborhoods. So the whole idea was that we would segregate a portion of the H&I grant program allocation in 2020 in the manner of $15,000. Now this $15,000 is in addition to the $68,000 I just talked about. So this is a separate amount of money. And what we were going to do is pool that money, the 15 grand, with any monies raised by United Way in that campaign that I just talked about. And then once we have those funds pooled, we would essentially create a request for proposal, a very detailed RFP that would essentially say, here's the issue we want a group to work on. Here's the amount of money we have to fund that. Please submit a proposal that addresses that issue for those amount of funds. So really kind of a targeted, very tight approach in terms of allocating city resources. So we did hold the campaign, again, as I mentioned, in February and March of this year. It was kind of focused on businesses. It wasn't like a really all-encompassing campaign. And Kim can talk a little bit more about that. We didn't raise quite as much as we were hoping. We raised $3,000. But again, this is a pilot program. We'll talk about some lessons learned as well. But in terms of next steps, staff will work with United Way as well as our grant committee to craft that RFP that I just talked about. And then once we get that RFP, once we get proposals, those will be approved by our council as well. Now, I think I mentioned I did want to have another committee meeting and get that RFP in front of that committee to hammer that out. Obviously, given the social distancing requirements, we're not able to have meetings at this time. But I think at some point soon, we'll touch base with committee members in United Way and just see how we can kind of keep moving this RFP process along. So with that, that's kind of a quick overview of the Fitchburg Fund. I think I might, at this point, turn it over to Kim to talk a little bit about United Way's role, and then maybe just some lessons learned and future directions as well. So Kim, are you there?
Yep, I'm here. Thank you, Wade. And thank you to all of you for letting me join in on this part of your discussion today. So yeah, I think Wade and I have been working on this project together since probably summer of last year, when we really started pulling together what is this, what could this partnership look like? And I think the plan that was pulled together and the basic execution of it was good. We did not raise the money that we had hoped to raise, which was, we had hoped to raise $15,000 to match the $15,000. And a couple of things came through as we were moving, or came to light as we're moving through the execution of this. And I would say the two big rocks that I like to say are, one, internally from United Way's perspective, we were very careful about not wanting to tap again into the companies and the businesses that we work with in Fitchburg who run an annual campaign. We let them know that we were doing this, but it was more of a letting them know we were doing this versus kind of asking them to also participate. The other piece to that was in pulling the businesses that aren't a part of our normal annual campaign, we ran into a lot of problems with not having accurate information. So again, just even being able to get the word out to these folks became a little bit of it was a challenge. So I think one of our big lessons learned is that, we need to find a way to more overtly invite the people who already support United Way to also be a part of this. It's kind of anecdotal at this point on from where I sit, but those businesses that we weren't real overt with, they are predisposed to being community partners. That's why they run a United Way campaign. So their predisposition is there. I don't think being a part of something focused within the community that they live and that their employees live would take away from that. So that was a big lesson, I think a big lesson learned from our part. I think the other piece of this is how to focus the issue a little bit tighter than what we did this time. It's kind of when you're sending stuff out to people and you have those three big buckets, it's not as focused. I mean, obviously a huge example from, from United Way's end right now is the response we got to, the COVID-19 fund. Within 2 weeks, you raised over $2 million for that fund. Now, obviously that's more of a outside, quote, natural disaster type thing. But I think we can do that even on something like this. Be more focused. Have it be something that when people see it, they're like, I need to support that. I think the issue was a little too broad. So I think that was another big piece of it. But I think, I believe the partnership can work. It's just, I also think we needed to expand the amount of time that we did the fundraising effort. I think we had initially really kind of wanted to cut that off mid-March. I'm not going to lay a whole lot of blame on what happened with COVID-19 and this project. Yes, they have intersected, but I don't think that was necessarily something that would have caused some of the fundraising to not work out as we had anticipated in February. So I don't know, Wade, do you have things you want to add to that?
No, I think that's a really good summary.
I have a question.
Yes.
And I raised this question in our last meeting. I am Julia. I am part of the Healthy Neighborhood Initiative. The question is, why we don't United Way include this Fitchburg fund in the annual campaign? You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Because it's going to be easier for everyone, because I receive at my work, we are part of the annual campaign, and you receive your form and you can check which organization you want to fund, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I don't know why we cannot be part of the annual campaign, you know what I mean? Like people can choose and say, I want to donate my funds to this organization and the Fitchburg Fund, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Especially for the Fitchburg company, they are part of the annual campaign, or the Fitchburg resident that they participate United Way. So that one I want to know why we are not part of the annual campaign, or if we can be included in future years.
Yeah. Julia, that's a great question. And I'm going to be as transparent as I can. That is a question that I have also asked. 2 years ago, I led a group of community volunteers around kind of what we call transforming our revenue model at United Way, just because landscape is different than it was, even 10 years ago. And one of the groups that was kind of we had a set of design forum teams, and one of the groups was really looking at what I call geo-based giving. So in other words, to your point, people can participate in their annual campaign at work, but if they live in Sun Prairie, they can designate that what they give through their annual campaign goes to support work that United Way is a part of in Sun Prairie, goes to support work that is in Fitchburg. I think this partnership that we did for this fund was kind of a very small stepping stone in getting people to understand that, we need to actually make this not a separate campaign, but a part of the annual campaign. So I think that is one of my internal conversations that I'll be having over the next couple of months. Is how do we take something like this and just make it an option for people as they're giving in their annual campaign. So great question. Totally on the same page as you. So, stay tuned, I guess, for more, because I think that's another lesson from probably the pilot is trying to do this separate isn't necessarily going to give us the results that we're looking for. So I appreciate you bringing the question up.
Okay, thank you for considering. Okay. Any other question for Kim?
Kim, this is Joyce. Can you spell your last name and tell me what your role is with United Way, please?
Sure. My last name is spelled H-U-Y-S-T-E-R. and I am Director of Transformational Giving. Talk about a fancy title, right?
All right, should I move on?
Yes.
Okay. So another piece of the H&R that I'd quickly like to touch on, a very important piece, is our neighborhood navigators. And again, I think some folks in CETA are kind of familiar with this concept, but I want to just provide a brief overview. So basically, our navigators are two part-time city employees, as well as residents of the North Fitchburg Road neighborhood. They are solely funded by Dane County at this point in time. There's no city resources that are used to fund them. And basically what they do is they assist our neighborhood residents in learning about and accessing available resources and programs and services, as well as gathering feedback on neighborhood needs and wants. So there's our two navigators, Carmen and Elizabeth, both Spanish speakers. I oversee them at this point in time, and they're great to work with. And we'll talk a little bit about what they do. So again, as I mentioned, their job is to essentially engage with our residents. So where do they do that? Well, they attend regular meetings. There's lots of regularly scheduled meetings in their neighborhoods where program and service providers meet to talk about how to address resident needs. So they attend those meetings. They have what I call office hours. They basically go to places where residents frequent, and they engage with them in those environments. And then kind of the last big piece is they organize neighborhood events, and they develop social circles to really, again, engage and connect with neighborhood residents. To that point, they have a big task in 2020. It's going to be something new for them. I think it's a pretty big deal. They're going to serve as lead coordinators of 6 weeks of summer programming at Leopold Park in the North Fitchburg Road neighborhood. Now, this programming has been going on for the past couple of years. It was formerly coordinated by our city's outreach librarian. That position has since been reallocated. But I do want to point out, this is top level professional type event organizing. So this will be new to Carmen and Elizabeth. I'm confident they can pull it off. They're going to have a great support group. But I guess I just do want to reiterate, if we do see successes with this program, I think that'll really show the value of Carmen and Elizabeth to the city. And I hope at some point we can have a discussion about how do we think about ways the city can support those positions by other means. Again, they're as of right now, they're fully funded by county money.
So I just want to confirm that that's still going on.
As of now, we're planning for it. We're actually gonna have a meeting next week to talk details, but I think we are planning. Obviously, if things don't pan out, we'll reevaluate. But I think we're thinking of late June as a start date, running through August. So yeah. So they've been on the job about a year, since March of 2019. They've connected with approximately 600 city and neighborhood residents. I talked earlier about neighborhood program and service providers, partners. They've connected with them as well, built really good relationships with our community school up there at Aldo Leopold, City of Madison staff, and then again, just various other neighborhood partners as well. Yep.
Just when I get it, before you leave this slide, this is Scott, if I could interject some thoughts before you leave.
Yep. Yeah, that's a good segue, Scott. I also want to just talk about how they've really integrated themselves with our other city departments. Again, they work under the planning department, but they've coordinated with our police department. They've coordinated with our parks department, with our library, with our senior center as well. So with that, Scott, yeah, feel free to chime in.
And just to interject a little bit of information, our recreation department, who do have seasonal employees that coordinate recreational programs during the summer. In talking with our recreation director, Chad Siegel, he does feel confident that if programs do occur this summer, that his staff can provide some support to Carmen and Elizabeth in implementing any of the programs that they may undertake.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So I guess before we move on to the hub, maybe now is another good time to take any questions on neighborhood navigators.
No.
Okay, moving on to the last piece. This is actually the piece that I'm most excited to present today. We'll talk neighborhood hub. Again, we're going to share a lot of information with you. We hope you like it, and we'll see where we go from there. So I want to talk about a few things. The first being project goals, and really what we want to do. What we wanted to do with the project was to create a multifaceted plan. Then we'll talk about that plan process and timeline. We'll talk about how we engage people around that plan in terms of formulating that plan. We'll talk about what the plan is and isn't. Then we'll talk about the plan itself, and then we'll talk next steps. So I guess at the beginning, I just would like to kind of throw out thank yous. I do want to sincerely and honestly say that I've been in this profession probably 12 plus years. This is one of the coolest projects I've been fortunate enough to be involved with, not just from a personal perspective, but from a city and a community development perspective. So I want to thank Robin Jacob, our primary consultants at AIRS, Mike, our architect consultant at Egbert Anderson, Craig, he's our golf course planning consultant from Oliphant, David Gevers, he works for EJ Plesco. They own a lot of the land in the area that we'll be talking about. And David was gracious enough to let us do some preliminary planning on properties they own. So we want to thank David. Obviously, I want to thank Scott. He's been a really big part of this. Mike was kind of really helped us get this off the ground in terms of finding some potential funding to do the plan. And obviously you folks for approving the funding and really being champions of this planning process. So thank you. Moving into project goals, again, we want to create a multifaceted plan that does three things. First thing is we want to create a plan that meets the social and recreational needs of that neighborhood's residents, thereby enhancing their quality of life and increasing their access to opportunities. Secondly, probably just as important, we want the hub to serve as a catalyst to assist in stabilizing that neighborhood and that corridor, ideally spurring new investment and enhancement of property values and all the good things that go along with that. And then finally, and more kind of focusing in, we want to ensure the long-term financial sustainability of our golf course operation. So a little bit more detail on project goals 1 and 2. When I think about the hub, I think about creating a space that's what I use the word on, and by that I mean something's going on there 24/7, 365. So just a center of activity, a hub of activity. Similarly, we want to look at creating a plan that provides something for everyone. So not just something for the neighborhood, not just something for teens, not just something for seniors, but something for everybody. Children, teens, young professionals, families, and seniors. To that point, we want to be sure that this plan thinks about addressing not just the needs of the current neighborhood residents, but also the needs of future residents. We all know that there's some new development going on up there. So how do we address current resident needs, but also address future resident needs as well? We also want it to be a place that attracts not just the neighborhood, but that attracts the broader community. And again, by having something for everyone, we think it can do that. And finally, to that point of room tax dollars and heads and beds, we do want to try to create a space that attracts visitors. So, in kind of the way I look at summing that up is the idea that what attracts people most, it would appear, is other people. And that's a quote from William White. So the idea is we want to create a place that's on, that has people, and all the good things that happen as a result of people interacting and intermingling. So project goal 3, again, this is kind of golf course focused. Just some history for folks that aren't aware. Back in 2013, we did initiate a subsidy to our golf course operator. We essentially the city doesn't manage the course. We have a third-party operator. So in 2013, we started paying that operator additional funds to operate. That operator also keeps all of the profits. So this subsidy is on top of his profit revenue. Just this past year, we did increase that subsidy to $50,000 per year, with the idea that it would increase $1,000 annually for a 10-year period. So the current operator actually has a 10-year lease through 2030. So all that being said, I think, if you folks read the papers, you see what's happening with the Madison courses. They're struggling to make those things financially sustainable, losing a lot of money. So golf is a sport in flux, and municipal courses are struggling as a general concept. So again, another piece of this plan is how do we position the golf course to retain its traditional customer base, but also attract new customers. And we are working under some specific council direction to maintain the golf course as a 9-hole course. I just want to throw that out there. Very quickly, in terms of plan, process, and timeline, I'm not going to run through all this with you, but I just want to throw this up there to show you we've done a lot of work in kind of a short amount of time, less than a year. So we began back in, I think it was late spring 2019. We gathered primary stakeholders. We had public meetings. We've gathered feedback both at public meetings and through surveys. And as a result of all that work, we prepared a concept plan that we presented to some stakeholders. We tweaked that plan based on feedback. And the number 5 there, the top bullet, is where we are today. We have our draft concept plan 2 that we're presenting to our primary stakeholder, as well as to you guys, to CETA, and then Parks Commission as well. In terms of future steps, we envision another public meeting if and when we're able to meet in public again, to gather neighborhood feedback on our concept. And then ultimately we will go to council to present that concept. And then our last step will be to incorporate all the feedback we've gotten in steps 5 through 7, tweak that plan, get that final plan finished, and then await direction on implementation. So in terms of what the plan is and isn't, I think this has been very important to think about. The plan is a concept. It isn't a detailed architectural blueprint or a floor plan. It is malleable. It's tweakable. We can do edits to it. That's the whole point of the discussion today. It certainly isn't rigid at this point. And finally, it isn't quite complete. I'd say we're about 95% done, but there certainly is work to be done, and we'll talk more about that. So before we get into kind of the plan itself, I just want to talk about some of the feedback we gathered from the neighborhood. And I kind of broke them out into 3 big pieces: desired outdoor amenities, desired indoor amenities, and then essentially desired services. So, and I'm again not going to read all these to you. You folks can read, obviously, but I think there are a couple themes I just want to point out. Really, it's about creating gathering spaces, social spaces where people can interact. It's about healthy food. It's about access to food, and it's about recreation and education. So those are kind of some of the takeaways that I'm seeing from these feedback pieces. So moving into the plan, I'd like to talk about its 3 major components. There's basically 3 parts to the plan. The first part is what we're calling a really cool enhanced park space on the north side of Traceway Drive. The second piece is improving our golf course on the south side of Traceway. And the final piece is kind of a big ticket item, essentially a neighborhood center type facility, also on the south side of Traceway. So with that, I would like to get into the plan. Now this map is kind of our site plan. We'll get into some more visuals and pick at this plan. But what you see here is the 3 pieces I just talked about. So the big red circle with the number 1, that's our component 1, north side of Traceway, enhanced park space. On the bottom of the screen, you see two circles with number 2. That's our golf course improvements. And then number 3, again, just to the north of that, on the south side of Traceway, is our big ticket kind of neighborhood center item. Now, I do just want to point out, I talked earlier about EJ Plesco and allowing them to plan on their property. I'm going to try to point out the property line here. So if folks can see my cursor, I'm kind of following this black dashed line. Everything to the west of that dashed line is currently Plesco property. And we'll talk more about that, but I just want to throw that out there for context. Okay, so images, renderings. This is what we got. Is kind of an aerial view. Now this is looking to give folks orientated here. This is Traceway Drive, where my cursor is. Fish Hatchery Road runs out this way. So we're looking, I guess, kind of southeast. So this is the north side of Traceway, south side of Traceway. So this is our enhanced park space. This is our neighborhood center. And this is our golf course here. And we'll talk about each one of those pieces. This is a view looking the other way. So we're looking north. Again, Traceway Drive here, enhanced park space here, neighborhood center here, and then golf course kind of out of the picture down here. So let's talk a little bit about plan component number one, the enhanced park space. So I do want to premise all this stuff that what we're going to do is talk about specific uses with each of these components, and we do have preliminary costs identified as well. I do want to be very clear, these are cost estimates. And I also want to be clear that we understand that we began this planning process months ago when the world was a different place. Obviously, we know now that economics are being affected, budgets are being affected, resources are being reallocated. So we understand that, but we want to be very clear that at this point in the game, we wanted to be frank with some of the costs to these items, because while we do think this is a really cool plan, a really cool vision, there will be costs to implement that vision. So we thought it made sense to throw those out there for discussion's sake at this time. But again, estimates for discussion's sake. So the first piece of plan component one is a very large four-season shelter, multi-purpose indoor-outdoor rentable space, a food and drink concession window and seating area, equipment rental window, information resource desk. We could potentially have the navigator's man, a resource desk up there, and then restrooms as well. And you can see the price tag on that. Adventure playground with water feature is the next piece. Again, we're envisioning kind of like a McKee Farms style playground, maybe not that exact style, but just the idea that creating a playground that's really unique, that really attracts families and kids and makes people want to use the space. We are thinking about what's called a bike pump track, and we'll talk more about what that is. Then we kind of have this flex space. I talked earlier about having the space be something for everyone. You know, I think we are going to see an increased, and I don't like to use the term millennial, but a younger professional crowd move into that corridor. So figuring out ways we can make the space appealing to them as well. So we have this idea of kind of a yard games, flex space, you know, maybe some community garden options as well. And then another big ticket item would be kind of a hard court, what we'll call a hard court event area. This would be covered. It could have multiple uses. We could have it serve pickleball, basketball. It could be a space for farmers markets, craft fairs, constables, festivals, movie nights. And in the winter, it could serve as an ice skating rink as well. And then, of course, there are miscellaneous construction costs that we're still in the process of working through. So that's kind of the pieces of the component. Let's talk a little bit about management, because this type of space is a space that we don't currently have in the city. And we understand as staff that with a space like this, there will be additional management needs. So in talking with Scott, our parks director, I think at this point we're envisioning, again, the neighborhood navigators potentially serving to manage portions of the property and potentially some additional seasonal or year-round park staff as well. And that, again, that would come at a cost. We do foresee potential revenue on the site with a food and drink concession. That's kind of a ballpark figure, but I think that's realistic to think about those sorts of revenues. And then I do want to point out, this isn't pie in the sky. We do have funding sources available, and Scott can speak to this in more detail if required. But we do have funds in our park fund dedication and improvement fund to implement some of these things. There are county funds available as well, CDBG, as well as state funds as well. So kind of moving into the pieces that we just talked about. So this is a kind of a ground level view. Again, Traceway Drive running here. So this is the north side of Traceway. So let's just kind of identify the pieces we just talked about. So the building here is the shelter we just discussed. This area here, kind of these covered open air is the event area. Again, we could do pickleball, basketball, festivals, farmers markets, movie nights, concerts, all sorts of things. And then we'll see a better picture of this in the next slide, but back here is kind of our playground and pump track area. And one thing I do want to point out, and you'll see it more as we run through the images, is what I'll call it an esplanade. So this large paved area, I think has a real important function. When we were talking about planning the hub site, you know, one of the challenges was how do we connect the north side with the south side? How do we make this hub function as one big component? So we really view this space as kind of a connecting spine. Again, you could have food trucks set up on it. You could have, you know, kind of walking art fairs, festivals, those sorts of things as well. So that's another important piece. So this is actually looking the other way from the other side of the property. So this is looking south. Again, Traceway Drive is running here. Again, the back end of the property. So now you see our pump track. And again, this is basically kind of an emerging trend in recreation, but basically a place where kids, teens, adults can hop on a bike, and it's almost kind of like a bike obstacle course, kind of like an introduction to mountain biking. And then we have our kind of enhanced adventure playground. And don't get too hung up on what the playground looks like right now. These are kind of just placeholder ideas. Certainly, if we get the go-ahead to implement, we'll really get more detailed with what that playground could look like. But again, you see the backside of the event space with some tents set up. And then also kind of this open air shelter picnic area. We envision that as, again, you could have a food and drink concession window and folks could sit there and have mom and dad could have a cup of coffee while, Johnny's riding a bike on the pump track and Susie's playing on the playground. So again, a space for everybody. This kind of gives you a little bit more of a ground level view of looking at kind of the back of the property. So again, we've got that playground here, open air feature here, shelter with picnic area here, esplanade here. And then again, you can kind of see the larger community center that we'll talk about in a minute in the background as well. So I think what I'm gonna do is just keep plugging through all this stuff, give you guys a big picture, and then we'll certainly have time for questions and comments. So moving on to phase 2, golf course improvements. Again, we're talking south side of Traceway, kind of in the current golf course area. Now, what we're looking at here, and again, these ideas were brought to us by Craig from Oliphant. Oliphant is a locally based, nationally renowned golf course management and design company. And I think, I talked earlier about where is golf going and how do we make golf financially sustainable. Craig knows golf trends. Their whole job is to foresee golf industry trends and design courses and infrastructure that meet those trends and make money. So these are 2 ideas that came from Craig. The first idea is this idea of an all ages putting green. So this is a kind of a concept of that. So the idea would be, so think of your traditional putting green times 10, and then add some topography to it. And the idea here is you could have kids out there, putting balls around. You could have seniors. You could have serious golfers. You could have tournaments. It's almost like kind of like a mini golf course on steroids. Is maybe a way to look at it. So again, a feature that Craig thinks is kind of an emerging trend in the golf industry. And then the bottom picture there, I don't know if we have golfers in the audience, but if you guys have been to Vitens up on Whitney Way off the Beltline, this is kind of similar to what they have. We're calling them enhanced driving range bays and target greens. So the idea is it's a driving range, but it's really an experience. It's a social experience. So you've got opportunities for food and drink. You've got opportunities to socialize. Maybe you've got some heaters out there. You've got some electronics. And then in terms of what you're hitting to, you're not just hitting into a fence or into a flat field. You're hitting to specific targeted greens. So again, these are features that we think could certainly draw people to the golf course that traditionally haven't been there. Another piece of the puzzle is another big piece of the puzzle would be to create a golf course operations and maintenance and storage facility, essentially a new facility. So that's another big piece of the puzzle. In terms of management, again, we understand these things will have consequences in terms of management. I did mention earlier, the golf course is currently managed by a third party. Craig has given us some annual maintenance, additional maintenance costs at about $7,000 per year. Now, he also did mention that with those features we just talked about, you'll likely see some annual revenue. So we've got that number identified as well. And then kind of to repeat myself on the bottom there, this isn't pie in the sky. We do have some funding sources to potentially make a dent in some of these ideas. And I don't have a whole lot of images for that part of the plan. We'll get some images as we move forward. But again, I think the one piece that I didn't really talk about was the golf course, or this is the operations facility. So this would be a new building that would house operations as well as storage and maintenance. And then you can see kind of the access to the driving range here. And then that really cool putting green that we just talked about would be kind of this area here. All right, so moving into component 3. Now, again, I just want to premise this, as we all know, this is a big ticket item. In terms of planning, we wanted to put everything on the table. We think there's a realistic element to this, but I just want to preface it with, this is big picture, big idea planning. So we're talking neighborhood center type facility on the south side of Traceway, a large facility, about 23,000 square feet. And we'll talk about why we sized it that big. But essentially classrooms, meeting rooms, rec rooms, multi-use rooms, basically everything you would see in a traditional neighborhood center. We are envisioning city staff operation space as well. Now the big thing here in terms of why we sized it large is we have had some general conversations with neighborhood program and service providers, basically asking the question, if the city had a facility and had space, would you be interested in locating in that space and paying rent? And the answer, generally speaking, was yes, we'd be interested. So kind of the idea there is there would be city space, there would be community center space, but there'd also be space for folks that serve the neighborhood. Now, and obviously the price tag there is large. We understand that. But what I do want to point out here is, again, this is just a first blush concept. The important thing here is we have kind of a general cost estimate per square feet. So if in the course of finalizing this plan and moving towards implementation, if this item is something decision makers want to explore, obviously we can ramp down the size. And then, we would use the square footage there to come up with a different preliminary cost. So again, just food for discussion. Again, with this sort of magnitude of a facility, there would be additional management costs. I'm talking with Scott, Parks Director. I think we're envisioning almost like a satellite location, meaning the current Rec and Community Center Director, Chad Siegel, could probably put this under his supervision. But we would need, a body up there in terms of probably a rec assistant, and then building maintenance as well. Obviously, a building of that size will require additional maintenance. Now, I did mention potential revenues. We haven't dug into those yet. We will do that. But again, with additional costs come some potential revenues as well. Now, here things get obviously a little bit more fuzzy with funding, basically based on the things we talked, the 2 phases we talked earlier, and the size of this project. So there are the same sources I mentioned earlier, but for this to happen, obviously there would need to be other funding sources as well. 2 other points I want to point out, we did touch on them a little bit, but for this to happen in the way we planned for it, there would be some additional city costs. I mentioned earlier about the plan showing the building footprint on land that isn't ours. So if we were to proceed with this plan, we would need to acquire some property from EJ Plesco, about 0.3 acres. And then we would kind of concurrent with that current area houses a tennis court. And in talking with David, the financing for all those apartments is tied up in those apartments having some rec elements available to them. So the idea is if those tennis courts go away, they would need to be, that type of amenity would need to be replaced somewhere else on Plesco's property. That's That's one option. Or a second option is, could there be just a discussion where all the stuff we just talked about could somehow meet Plesco's needs for that recreational amenity? But so these are some things that we're still trying to iron out, but I just want to make folks aware that these would be outstanding issues if we proceed with the plan as currently designed. So moving into some visuals on the neighborhood center. Again, this is looking, I guess, kind of southeast. So this is Traceway Drive. Fish Hatch is kind of out of the picture there. This is that kind of Esplanade connection I talked about. Golf course stuff is down here. And then this is looking back essentially north towards the park space. So you see the parking lot, the Esplanade, the neighborhood center, and then other pieces as well. So I am getting close to the end here, so thanks for bearing with me. Now, so we talked about 3 plan components, but what I want to talk about now is phasing. And I think this phasing is based on the idea of what's realistic, what's palatable, and what's feasible given current budgets. So 3 colors here. You'll see a purple, a blue, and an orange. So purple is phase 1, orange is phase 2, and blue is phase 3. So what we're thinking is basically north side of Traceway, enhanced park space, with the exception of the covered event area, would be a phase 1. Golf course improvements, phase 2. And then kind of the real big ticket items, covered event area and neighborhood center would be a phase 3. So that's kind of how we're, again, all this is subject to change, but that's how we're framing it now. You know, that being said, we talk funding, we talk pieces of the hub. I do want to also mention our partners. Now these are existing and potential future partners. Bike Fitchburg has been interested from the get-go in terms of that pump track. We have had conversations with Saris. I think if we do come back to them with kind of a final bike pump track plan, they are very interested in promoting pump tracks throughout the region. So I think they'd probably be interested in having a conversation with us. First Tee, we've had them at our golf course in terms of youth programming the past couple of years. We hope to keep them there with some of these hub elements. And then I mentioned earlier some of the folks that shall remain nameless, but basically folks that would be interested in maybe cohabitating with us if we decide to kind of develop that third facility, or that second facility. So again, just wrapping up, we looked at the slide earlier. I just want to kind of end with this. Next steps, again, we're here today to get feedback from you guys. We will then present this at a public meeting. We will go to council, and then we will prepare a final plan and then await further implementation. So with that, I am done. And I guess just, Scott, is there anything you want to add that I didn't cover?
No, I think it was well done. Well done, Wade. I appreciate the time.
Okay.
Go ahead. Yep.
No, I want to thank you, Wade, and also want to let the CEDA member that they're going to receive the link with this presentation. And also, I know that this one is going to go to several committees, especially parks, so they want to participate in the parks committee meeting too, or watch those meetings. So so they can, they can understand a little bit better about this project. So, so do you want to add anything else, Wade, or because we already 12?
I hope I didn't take too much of your time. Again, it's been about a year process, so I wanted to give you guys a thorough overview, and I think we've given you everything we've got. So, yep.
No, I think it's great. It's thank you very much. It's beautiful. I hope we can make it happen. I really like what I saw. So thank you, Wade, for all your work.
Hey,
So
Julia, can I just ask a quick question here? Wade and Scott, can we coordinate with you that when it goes to parks that we invite CEDA members to participate either virtually or in person?
Yeah.
For that meeting, and
yep,
then
exactly. Yep. And Scott and I have kind of been throwing ideas around with that, but yeah, we will coordinate that with you. Yep.
Yeah, then they can provide input and feedback at that, and we'll send them out the link to this presentation. And one thing for all of us, staff and CEDA members to keep an eye on is stimulus number 4 package. If any of these might be shovel-ready projects, this might be something that we look for, what are the buckets of funding that are included in stimulus for?
Thanks, Mike.
Hey, Wade, this is Mark Hamilton. Just a quick question for you. What is the building that currently sits there by the pool to be used for? You just identified it as existing building, and I know it's been several things over the years. Or
you mean
is it part of the plan?
You mean the Plesco's leasing office on the southern end?
Yes.
Yeah, so that isn't part of the planning area. That would remain as is. Our hope is, assuming, all the other development that's going on up there, assuming the hub gets off the ground at some level, I would think with this stuff happening, you would see some additional redevelopment. So maybe 5 or 10 years from now, that parking lot and that structure looks different. But for now, that's not our property, and that's not part of the planning area.
Okay, thank you. Like I said, it sits there in the plan with everything going on around it. So thank you.
Yep.
By the way, I think this is a great plan you guys have put together. I hope we can go forward with this in this difficult time.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay, so it's already 12:10, close to 10. So we have the final speaker is gonna be Bill Balky. He's gonna give us an update of the Fitchburg Road construction. So is Bill on the phone, on the chat?
I can be on the chat. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
I can hear you, Bill.
Okay. The Fitchburg Road construction, we've got quite a bit going on. Fish Hatchery Road, they just did the major switch over on Monday. So now they're constructing the northbound lanes at this time, and all the traffic is on the southbound lanes. So what we're going to be seeing over there is they're working at the intersection of Greenway Cross and going to the south from there. We are looking to do a shutdown of the intersection on Tuesday night to do a water main crossing. So we'll have a detour up there and some detours around the area down to Index and Post Road just overnight while we do that water main connection. This stage of traffic is going to be in place until about the beginning of July. So this is what you're going to see for the next few months as they construct the northbound lanes of Fish Hatchery Road in that area. Moving over to the McKee Road project over by Seminole Highway. They are constructing over there, and it's going to be down to one lane of traffic in each direction. Depending on where they're working, it could be the inside lane or the outside lane is what we're trying to keep people busy while they're out there doing the reconstruction of the utilities as well. So the utilities is kind of slowing us down a little bit as far as them completing their work on time, but we're working out there as much as we can to keep traffic moving. Starting on Monday, we are going to be closing down the Badger State Trail at McKee Road and having a new detour in place. They're going to start posting that this week on Friday. And then on Monday, it's going to officially close down. And that will be the official detour route for the bikes until later this summer, the end of August. So I'll have a map for that, but essentially it's going to involve some detour on Commerce Park Drive, Sub-Zero Parkway, Cottonwood to the Military Ridge Trail. And I worked with Mark Hamilton to come up with the route on that. And so we've got approval from the DNR and the City of Madison as well to go forward with that. We're just doing a little bit more early right now, just due to the construction that we have to take place near the Badger State Trail. And McKee, it's kind of dangerous in that area, and we don't want bikes to come through in that area with the equipment and everything. So we're starting the detour a little bit earlier. Highway 14 is under construction as well. They've got some crossovers that they were constructing, and that's down to one lane of traffic in each direction for now. And I didn't participate in the meeting this morning, but I'll get an update on that to see what's coming in that. But they're working on the bridges down by Oregon and coming north. So they'll be doing 2 bridges down there, and then next year in Fitchburg, they'll be doing the Burn Bridge and the McCoy Road Bridge. So that project's coming this year and next year as well. Sain Road, we're going to be designing it this year and constructing it next year. That would be from Lacey Road to the north up past McCoy Road, or where McCoy Sain diverges up there. And that construction is going to be taking place next year, as well as the resurfacing of Sain Road to the south of Lacey Road down to Burnland. I think it's Burnland, no, Burn Road, sorry, down there. Commerce Park Drive will be starting up hopefully on Monday over there in the industrial park this year. That would be over by the new Promega expansion, and we'll be going pretty close to Lacey Road, but not connecting it up to Lacey Road at this point this year. Next year we'll be reconstructing Lacey Road and then making that connection to Commerce Park Drive as part of that construction. Then the following year in 22, we're planning to do Seminole Highway and the Lacey Road intersection with the roundabout, or traffic control improvement at that intersection. And then I think that's all we've got going on. The Beltline's going to get resurfaced next year in 21. And I think that's everything that's on the map here.
Okay, thank you, Bill.
You're welcome.
So I think this is, do you have any question for Bill? Okay, I think that this is our last item. It's 12:15, I don't know. Some of us, we need to go back to work. So, so Mike, I don't know, you want to add something? You have 1 minute.
I'll go succinctly here.
Microphone?
I'll go succinctly here. Under the COVID response there from the beginning of the Safer at Home order, Angela and I have coordinated regularly with communication. The Fitchburg Chamber Visitor Business Bureau has been a great partner, and you should be receiving weekly updates from them. They're using our business luncheon list. We decided instead of sending out individual communication just to coordinate our efforts, and they've been great partners with that. Fact TV has also been a great partner. There's 4 business links out there of Promega, Playcon, Brown Sales, and Yahara Bay, and how they're engaged in the health crisis that we're experiencing right now. So if you haven't had a chance to watch those, I'd encourage you to take a look at those. Obviously, our businesses have been hit hard and are hurting, especially the restaurants and hotels, as you can imagine. So anything we can do to steer business to those folks. We sent them out the Fitchburg Development Update, and sending them that, they reached out to the various contractors for those projects, and we've gotten some good feedback that has generated some additional business and cash flow to them during these difficult times. So we're going to continue to do that. The council continues to meet. We're trying to kind of keep as many projects flowing through our approval process so that way we can continue to see additional construction activity out here. So the Plan Commission, Public Works, and Finance and Council are all continuing to meet, at least virtually, to keep that pipeline going. And then Angela and I are continuing to monitor the various webinars about programs that have been set up through the SBA and through the federal government. So we've been pushing out a lot of information on the Paycheck Protection Program. Hopefully the House votes on the latest infusion of dollars for that. That's been kind of the immediate lifeline for small businesses to provide some cash flow and backstop their immediate needs. There's also the Economic Injury Disaster Loan Program. We've been sending out information on the WEDC program for small business grants, although that one's a little bit limited because it flows through community development financial institutions, but it meets the needs of a certain segment of our businesses as well. Kiva has ramped up their efforts, so we're sending out information on that crowdfunding source. And then we really appreciate Dane County stepping up with initially it was $225,000, and they increased it to $800,000 for the small business pandemic support grants that are available. And I know a couple of our businesses, at least that I've heard of, have tapped into that program, and that's being administered by the Dame Buy Local program. So we've really been trying to be a communication vehicle and a support network. We've been working with individual businesses on specific requests as they've come in, and have been coordinating our efforts related to that. So that's just a quick summary on that item. Any questions?
No.
No, okay. Then I'm just going to switch over to updates in the end there. As I said, we're trying to keep as many development projects moving forward. We've got good construction activity. The juice plant redevelopment, if you haven't been on Fish Hatchery Road recently, they're starting to put the foundations and footings in over there. You'll see the power lines being buried from the juice plant north to Post Road as part of that project as well. The Highline Senior Apartments move-ins will start there on May 1st. We've reached out to both EJ Plesko and Oakbrook Management, who's managing that property, to kind of coordinate safety and health protocols for move-in, and we'll be connecting them with our public safety people here in Fitchburg. The Sub-Zero Engineering and Design Center continues to move forward with their construction, as does Race Day Events already has occupancy, but Hop House continues to move forward with their construction. Both Promega projects, the R&D facility here on their campus and also the manufacturing facility on the west side, continue to move forward. Phoenix is really taking shape over on the east side here off of Lacey Road. So we're really fortunate that we've had that level of construction activity, because that then results in some additional business for those hotels and restaurants and other businesses in our community. So it keeps some minimal economic lifeline out there to generate some cash flow for those folks. At the end of this week, we should hear from WIDA on 2 tax credit projects. One would be Jacob Klein's workforce housing that's proposed for behind Hy-Vee, so we're hoping that he gets a WIDA tax credit allocation, and that project will move forward. And then there was one submitted for Lacey Road at Syene by a new group over there for possibly a senior housing development with some family townhome units as part of that land. So they're waiting to get their announcement from WIDA as well. We're anticipating that the Cameron Group will be starting probably in May or June with their senior housing development behind Super Target. That's the high-end resort style senior living, so that should still be moving forward. And then we're working quietly with the commercial anchor that's looking to be the foundation for the comprehensive development plan for the quarry across from Super Target. That would be another large commercial user, probably about 160,000 square feet. They've been working on their comprehensive development plan and due diligence. They've got an option on that property, and they're planning to go to the Jamestown Neighborhood Association to their meeting in June to share the plans that they have put together. And then on Tuesday night's Plan Commission, we had the approval for the Park Bank bank branch redevelopment for the corner of Greenway Cross and Fish Hatchery Road. That's going to be a really nice signature building up there. They have to come back in May just to combine the 2 parcels into one with a CSM, but then they're planning to start that project in June of this year. So we'll see that going forward as well. Now we continue to work with Vanderwall and Associates on the visioning for North Fish Hatchery Road and reaching out to some of those other property owners to try and keep those things moving forward. I think that covers everything. I'll take any questions. And then
Okay.
Lastly, one thing is the COPA, the Center for Organizations for the Performing Arts. We had a presentation from them in January, and there's a resolution that you had directed, CETA had directed us as staff to write. The council did approve that resolution, but Nancy Mistel, the coordinator for COPA, would also like CETA to provide some a letter of support, I guess. So I just wanted to ask this group, can you maybe just kind of give us the authorization that we draft a letter of support and have Julia as chair of CETA sign that?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Since you saw the earlier presentation, we figured that we didn't need to have her come back to another meeting to give you the same presentation again. just where we're limited right now with our ability and capacity to meet.
Okay, Mike, thank you very much. Thank you, everyone. And then I need a motion to adjourn. Stay healthy and well. And then I don't know when is going to be our next meeting. Maybe, I hope, in June. But if we need to make, a special meeting, there are some issues that we need to discuss and approve. We are going to have a meeting, okay? But I want to say thank you for your time. I need a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Ayes.
And-
The motion carries. Thank you very much, and good luck, Dan, in Florida.
And Joyce and I just want to say thanks, all CETA members for participating in the meeting. We also want to thank Back TV and IT for helping us to get it set up virtually as well. But we appreciate everybody's flexibility and patience as we kind of launch our virtual meetings.